Okay, picture this. It's your wedding day, you're just about to walk down the aisle, everything's set, and suddenly you get a call from your partner. But it's not to say, I can't wait to see you. It's to casually talk about the benefits of, well, taking a second wife. Shocking, right?
Yeah, it's definitely a complicated situation. It's love and betrayal and societal norms all kind of jumbled together. And then on top of all of that, you've got real practical concerns. Things like finances and taking care of any children involved.
Exactly, and that's what really struck me about all of this. There's the emotional side, but then also the practical advice being given. It's like, okay, this is a tough spot, but let's make sure you're financially secure no matter what.
Right, financial independence is crucial. It basically gives you choices. In a difficult situation, it can be the difference between feeling trapped and having the power to, to make your own choices.
It's like having a safety net, like you can stand on your own 2 feet no matter what. But let's talk about some of the specifics here. We're hearing about late-night activity on apps, possible infidelity going on for years. Do you think these are just isolated incidents or a bigger pattern of behavior?
That's a really important question, yeah. Sometimes we can get so caught up in a relationship that we don't see the warning signs. Or even worse, we just decide to ignore them. But these, what people call red flags, they usually don't just appear out of nowhere. Think of it like cracks in a foundation. If you see one, you should look for others. Often, it means there's a deeper problem that won't just fix itself.
It's like a puzzle, isn't it? All these separate pieces that on their own might not seem big. But when you put them all together, you start to see a clearer picture.
Exactly. And that's when it's so important to trust your gut feeling. If something in the relationship just feels off, it probably is. It's easy to dismiss those feelings, especially if you're invested in the relationship. But acknowledging them can save you a lot of pain later on.
One interesting thing is that the advice this woman is getting doesn't actually condemn the idea of a second marriage. It seems more focused on personal choice and having the courage to make your own decisions.
Yeah, I think that's a really strong perspective. It recognizes that societal expectations exist, but ultimately, you have the right to decide what you're comfortable with. Sometimes that means doing things differently, challenging the norm and saying, hey, this works for me, even if it's not what everyone else thinks.
And this isn't just about her, it's about her daughter too. The impact of this situation on a child is a serious thing, right?
Absolutely. Kids are incredibly perceptive. Even if they don't fully grasp what's happening, they learn about relationships by watching the adults around them. And studies have shown that children who grow up witnessing unhealthy relationship patterns, like constant arguments, disrespect, or emotional manipulation, are more likely to repeat those patterns in their own relationships. It's almost like a cycle that's really hard to break.
So it's not just about protecting yourself, it's about setting a good example for the next generation.
Exactly, and that's why the advice this woman is getting is so important. It's about putting self-respect and happiness first, even if it means making tough choices. Because ultimately, the strongest message you can send your children is that they deserve to be in healthy, loving relationships, and they have the right to walk away from situations that are hurtful or disrespectful. What really gets me is the way this whole thing went down. Like the lack of communication, or at least how it came out so late and just blew up. To wait till hours before marrying someone else to even mention a second marriage, that doesn't exactly scream healthy relationship, does it?
It's unbelievable,
Yeah.
right? 10 years they've been together, and this is how he decides to drop this bombshell. Makes you wonder what other important conversations they haven't had. What else has been going on under the surface all this time?
It really shows how important it is to be open and honest in a relationship, don't you think? It's about being able to talk about your needs and fears, even doubts, without being judged for it. When you don't have that trust and communication, it's like, well, it's breeding ground for misunderstandings to grow and resentment to build up.
And those early warning signs, the red flags, maybe they were missed or even ignored because they just weren't talking openly.
Could be. We all want to see the best in our relationships, especially when we've put so much into them. But this situation really highlights that you have to trust your gut. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't be afraid to ask the hard questions, even if it's uncomfortable.
You mentioned being uncomfortable, and I think that's a big part of it. Even when you know a relationship isn't good for you, walking away is so hard. Love doesn't always make sense, does it?
It really doesn't.
We get attached, we build memories, and we hold on to hope, even when maybe we shouldn't.
Yeah, love is powerful, and it can definitely cloud your judgment, make it hard to see things clearly. But it's important to remember that love shouldn't mean sacrificing your self-respect or your well-being. Staying in a relationship that hurts you or disrespects you, even if you still have feelings, sends a bad message. to yourself and to anyone watching, especially kids.
It's like you're saying it's okay to be treated that way.
Exactly.
And the advice this woman is getting, it emphasizes that it's not about getting back at him or anything. It's about taking care of herself and showing her daughter that she deserves respect. That's a powerful lesson, isn't it?
It is. Actions speak louder than words. And choosing to put self-respect and her own emotional health first says a lot. It also shows that marriage, even though it's legally binding, shouldn't be a trap. It's a commitment, sure, but one that needs respect, trust, and open communication.
And when those things are missing, like they seem to be here, it's time to step back and think. What are your non-negotiables in a relationship?
Right.
What are you willing to put up with? And what absolutely won't you accept?
Exactly. Those are questions we should all be asking ourselves, no matter what our relationship status is.
Because we get to choose what kind of relationships we want in our lives.
Yeah.
And sometimes the bravest, most loving thing you can do is walk away from something that isn't good for you anymore.
And about marriage not being a trap, it's worth remembering that there are lots of different ideas about marriage around the world. Different from what we might consider normal. Polygamy, for instance. It has its own set of challenges, for sure, but it shows that different relationship models exist. What works for one person or couple might not work for another.
That's a good point. It reminds us there's no one right way to have a relationship. It's about finding what fits your values and creating a dynamic that feels healthy and good for everyone involved. But in this specific situation, this woman seems to be at a real crossroads.
She is. And she needs to remember she's not alone. There's help out there. Support systems and professionals who can help her through this. Whether she stays in the marriage or decides to separate or divorce, having support can make a world of difference. It can help her cope and make the best choices for her and her daughter.
It's a good reminder that even in the middle of heartbreak and uncertainty, there's always hope. And there's always the possibility of healing and growing. Sometimes the hardest challenges lead to the biggest changes in our lives. This whole situation really makes you think about those societal pressures, especially in relationships. It's like there's this expectation for women, this pressure to fit a certain mold, just accept things, even if they're completely unfair or hurtful.
You're right. It's like in some cultures or communities, a husband taking a second wife is just something a woman is supposed to deal with, as if her feelings and needs don't even matter as much. But the advice she's getting is pushing back against that. It's telling her she has the power to choose what's right for her, no matter what other people expect.
It takes a lot of strength to go against those deep-rooted societal norms, especially when it's something as personal as marriage.
Absolutely. It's about knowing your worth. Refusing to settle for less, for something that diminishes you or makes you feel bad. And what's really inspiring is that by doing that, by standing up for herself, she's setting an amazing example for her daughter.
It's like they say, actions speak louder than words. By putting her own self-respect and well-being first, she's showing her daughter that it's okay to have boundaries, that it's okay to demand respect and walk away from anything that's hurting you.
Exactly. It's about showing healthy behavior, even when it's really hard. Kids are always watching us, learning from us, and the best thing we can leave them with isn't just what we say, but how we live our lives.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are the main takeaways you want listeners to think about?
For me, it comes down to a few things. Financial independence, knowing how to spot those red flags in relationships early on, and realizing how much our choices affect the next generation. And I think those apply to all of us, no matter what our relationship status is or what we're going through.
It's about being empowered, right? To decide what you believe in, set your boundaries, and build a life that feels real and fulfilling.
Exactly. So think about it. If you were in this woman's shoes, what would be most important to you? What message do you want to give to your children or to anyone who looks up to you about love, respect, and knowing your worth?
That's a powerful question, and one that's worth taking the time to think about. Because in the end, we all have the ability to make choices that lead to a better future, for ourselves and for those who come after us. And sometimes those really tough choices, the ones that are hardest to make, are the ones that set us free and bring us the most peace.